I'm here representing a number of research organisations from around the world that are very concerned about the oceans. So both the warming of the ocean due to general global temperature rises, but also the acidification of the ocean, because the ocean is taking up the carbon dioxide that we're emitting into the atmosphere. Already it's taken up 30% of that CO2, and when you add CO2 to water, you produce an acid, and this is essentially acidifying the ocean.
So this is something we've been aware of, or you've been aware of for some time, or is it, there's general agreement on the fact that acidification is heating up the oceans, is damaging to the oceans, but is this something that we've known about for a while?
We've known the chemistry of CO2 and water for years, but we didn't think, about 10, 20 years ago, we didn't think that by adding CO2 to the atmosphere that we'd acidify the whole global ocean, 75% of the surface area of the ocean. It's a huge amount. But we didn't really realize back then how much CO2 we'd be producing. So it's totally certain that the chemistry of it. What is less certain is the impacts on marine organisms, but we are seeing them now. In the last 10 years, we've done experiments with organisms in future CO2 scenario experiments. That is, how does this organism respond in a higher CO2 ocean? And in general, at least 50% of the organisms respond negatively to increased carbon dioxide in the ocean and the acidity that it produces. It affects the whole carbon cycle in the ocean. So how they build their shells, how they divide energy between the different parts of their physiology. Because all the time we're diverting the energy that we eat to carry out various jobs that our body demands of us. And it's the same for marine organisms. So they're having to divert more energy into shell building, so perhaps they're not reproducing as effectively, and so on. So at the same time, the oceans are warming. So this is another big stressor for a lot of organisms. And when you warm a liquid, you lose oxygen, you lose gases. So in some places in the world, oceans, they're warming, they're acidifying, and they're losing oxygen. And this is why we produce this, which is hot, sour, and breathless, ocean under stress. And for our Arabic colleagues, we've produced an Arabic version, and that's available on the website as a downloadable PDF, oceanunderstress.com. So very simple, both available there. In a sense, it's the perfect storm. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, but we know it's coming, we can measure it. And when it comes, it's arriving now, it's already happening. It will go on for tens of thousands of years. It's not something that will go away, and it will affect 75% of the surface area of the planet. Why should we care? Because it's the oceans, we live on land, where we get a huge amount of services and goods from the ocean, such as the fish that we eat, aquaculture. To feed the growing billions of people that we'll have on our planet, there's an expectation that the marine environment will give, good value there, and fisheries and aquaculture will expand to provide this. With 1 billion people depending on ocean protein as their sole protein source, this is a serious concern that the ecosystems that we depend on, the marine ecosystems that we depend on, will be impacted by this in a way perhaps not seen for 30 million years. It's the speed of change that is the thing that really worries scientists.
Even if we could slow the rate of acidification in the oceans, has the damage already been done, the long-term implications? Do we know what the long-term implications might be, or can we really only speculate at this stage?
I think we're more or less at a tipping point where in the next 10, 15 years, that if we do take positive action on reducing CO2 emissions, then while there will be some implications for the marine environment, the true effect of continuing business as usual will be just absolutely amazing on the marine ecosystems.
And what's the very least that the delegates here, that this COP18 could do to try to perhaps not rectify the situation at this stage, but again to slow the rate of decline of acidification?
We have to reduce CO2 emissions. You know, that's clear. It would be great to see ocean acidification being brought more publicly, less out of a footnote into the real negotiations, because it is another really good reason to reduce CO2 emissions. But we also need to include adaptation to acidification and ocean warming in the whole process as well. And there are a lot of coastal and small island developing states. In fact, all of us depend on the oceans. Half of the oxygen in the atmosphere is produced by the ocean, so it is our life support system. So we need to recognize that, and even though we tend to be land-dwelling organisms, our birth mother was the sea, and we must remember that.
I mean, is that a challenge, a difficulty in trying to get the message across? Because as you say, most of us don't live close to the sea. Is there a kind of an attitude, well, it's out there somewhere, it's deep down below, we don't have to see it? Is that one of the challenges, the problems in getting the message across?
Do you know, I think you're right. Even though we all like to go to the seaside, we spend money, diving, tourism is around shores and beaches is very big, so we love it. We like to know it's there, but I don't think people realize how this vast system is being damaged, and I think they would care. You know, we like to know it's there. We like to know that in fact it's 96% of the living space on the planet is the ocean. You know, and we're here talking about the other 4%. So I'm just saying, if, you know, a bit of equity for the ocean would be great.